Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and today I'm coming to you with a range report revisit. Yeah, this is going to be one of those guns that I get another chance to shoot, and because something has come up, I get to review from a different perspective. Today we're going to be taking another look at the Clark Custom Long Slide 1911. Now this was made by Jim Clark Sr. back in the 1960s, and if you guys want to see my original range report where I talk about the history and the quality of this gun, I'm going to put a link in the description below as well as a pinned comment. So it's probably best you guys, if you have not seen that video, go check that video out before watching this video where we get into a little bit more specificity when it comes to the ammunition that this gun was designed for. And that's the whole point of this range report revisit, because when I initially reviewed this gun, I only had access to modern loadings of 45 ACP. One was a 185 hollow point, and the other one was 230 grain hardball round nose. And after doing that review, I had many people tell me, including the owner, hey, I know you did the best that you could, but this gun was probably designed for a very specific loading, because back in the 1960s, the most predominant type of competition shooting was bullseye. And so Jim Clark Sr. designed all these guns with very specific loadings in mind. And probably it was going to be some type of semi-wad cutter and something that of course is cast. Well, I didn't have the information on that. He did make a few of these designed for hardball, and we weren't sure what it was designed for and built for. So I reviewed it with the ammunition that I had. I did have some issues. I came to the conclusion that 185 hollow point definitely ran better in this, and the 230 grain was tumbling and was not very accurate. The other issue with the modern loading is that they were quite powerful, and it felt like the action of this slide was a little bit slow. I still gave the gun high marks, and I said if you are a reloader and can figure out what this gun really wants to be used with, it is probably absolutely amazing. Well, I returned the gun to Chandler, who lent it to the channel for review, and my good friend Richard, who kind of facilitated this lending. And then they got back to me and said, hey, you'll never guess what we found. Because this gun was owned by one of Chandler's family members a long time ago. They were going through some of that person's older stuff, and they found 2 boxes of hand loads for this particular pistol. And the dates on these are from August the 4th, 1970. So as I'm filming this video, this ammo was loaded over 53 years ago and was more specifically loaded for this particular long slide 1911. So they said, I'm going to let you have this ammunition. I want you to shoot it again and see what the results are as compared to your previous experience. So we have 2 different loadings here. One is 185 grain and the other is 215, but I have more specificity on what each one of these are, and I want to tell you that in case you're really into reloading and like to geek out on all of the ballistics. The first box we have, and I'm going to refer to this in this video as box 1, we have Hensley & Gibbs mold number 130, 185 grain cast semi-wad cutter, size 2, 0.52 over 3.5 grains of bullseye powder in a Western cartridge case with Herter's primers. So let me go ahead and show you what this looks like. So as you can see, semi-wad cutter cast. There it is. There's the primer, the casing. And then I'm going to refer to box 2 as this one, and unfortunately he did not write down what the casting number is, but it is a 215 grain bullet, which is also a cast semi-wad cutter, over 3.45 grains of bullseye powder in a Remington case with Herter primers. So you can tell the difference in the case. This is a brass case, and actually I should probably get out one of the other rounds as well. So here is the projectile for box 2, And here's the projectile for box 1. Although they look very similar, you can see the profiles of those bullets are actually just a little bit different. So in this video, once again, box 1 is the 185 and box 2 is the 215. So, I mentioned that we had no idea what this gun was designed for, but obviously the owner of this pistol back in the 1960s and 70s knew what it was, and these were his hand loads. And so I'm hoping if I go to the range, I'm going to figure out what this gun really wants to be shot with. Another issue that I had when I reviewed this originally is the owner had put in some type of rubber buffer in here. Obviously this is a historic firearm and you don't want to damage the frame, and that 230 grain really chewed up that buffer. So I'm hoping this stuff is going to be a lot lighter loading. I know that based off of the specs that I have for this ammo should also be traveling downrange at a lot slower velocities than modern loadings of 45. So I think it's time we just take this thing to the range, see if there's any difference. So we're going to start off like always at 7 yards, and I'm going to use 2 side-by-side targets here. I'm first going to shoot for the left target and then for the right target. The first target is going to be the 185 or the box 1, and the second target will be the 215, and that's going to be box 2. We're just going to see what this ammo feels like, how accurate it is, if it changes anything about this gun, and if it even runs, and see what we discover. Then we'll talk about it and maybe do a few other tests. So here we go, 7 yards, 1 magazine box 1, 1 magazine box 2. And all I can say is that was extremely enlightening. Let's talk about box 1, the 185 grain. Extremely low recoil. It felt great in my hand. It always cycled. However, there were some erratic ejections. As you notice, sometimes the casing was ejected to the front of the firearm, sometimes to the side, and sometimes even to the left. But I had no failures. You'll also notice that the 185 grain was stable. All of the holes through the target are cylindrical. Now let's talk about box 2, the 215 grain. Now I know this doesn't come across on the camera. This was much more hard hitting, even though it's supposed to be loaded with 0.05 grains less of powder, so it's probably the weight of the projectile. You'll also notice that the target is ripped a little bit. I actually think that the 215 grain is tumbling just a bit, not as much as the 230 was in the previous range report. So it's pretty obvious that this gun wants to be shot with light 45. 185 kind of seems to be its sweet spot. You'll also notice that box 2 shot low. Now I did my very best to make sure I was aiming for the very center of the target. So I had a great experience with the 185 when it came to accuracy, and the 215 definitely shot a little bit lower. All right, so now that I got a little bit of data on this, I'm gonna set the target now at 10 yards. I'm gonna load up 2 magazines with the box 1, the 185 grain, the stuff that I think runs a little bit better. Now that I know what to expect, I'm going to shoot 1 magazine on the left target, 1 magazine on the right. Now that the target's a little bit further out, still want to make sure that these projectiles are stable in flight, and if the gun remains accurate, especially more accurate than it was when I was shooting modern ammunition. All right, so it appears that my experience now at 10 yards is going to mirror what happened at 7 yards. Now also remember, I'm not a competitive shooter. I'm pretty happy with those groupings. I think that they're pretty consistent, and the gun is hitting the target where I'm aiming. Extremely light recoil, and we still have those inconsistent ejections, but I'm not having any failures. The gun feels absolutely wonderful in my hand with this 185, and the projectiles are stable. So I definitely think this is the ammunition this gun was probably designed around. All right, so now I'm going to do the same thing, set up the target at 10 yards. I'm going to shoot for the right and left target with 2 different magazines, and now we're going to go back to box 2, the 215 grain. I'm just wanting to make sure that this is going to be consistent. I want to see if these projectiles can stabilize at all, what the target looks like, and if the felt recoil changes at all now that I'm getting used to this gun, and to make sure that the ammunition is consistent as it was loaded over 50 years ago. And I think the results here are very telling. As you can see, the paper is being ripped a little bit. Not as bad as it was with the 230 grain. I definitely don't think these projectiles are stable, and they are ripping the paper. Big old holes in there. That was kind of surprising. But the gun is still very accurate. With the groupings, it just shoots a little bit low, and I have to compensate for that. So maybe these 2 different boxes were just 2 different experiments the original owner was trying to work with when it came to this gun, but definitely the 185 is performing a little bit better. Not that the 215 is bad, still better than all of the modern factory loads we have today, but that projectile is just not stable. All right, I want to do one more thing before I give you guys my final thoughts and opinions on what I learned on this. I do want to bench rest this. I'm going to set the target at about 20 or 25 yards, try to take the human element out of it, and I am going to use a hostage target. And the only reason I'm going to do this is because I need to see where the bullets are impacting. So I'm shooting the hostage on purpose just because I can see it. So the first magazine will be the 185. I'm going to shoot that on the hostage taker, which is the orange guy, and I'm going to shoot the 215 grain on the hostage, which is the green guy, just so we can see the groupings at this further distance. So let's see what we discover. And with both those magazines, I was aiming for center mass. It is 100% obvious to me that the 185 grain is the superior loading for this gun. I still think it needs to be tweaked just a little bit more to get that consistent ejection, but this is the stuff this gun was designed for. But unfortunately, I think that puts this gun in a very precarious situation if you're a shooter or collector. Now, obviously, if you're a shooter, hopefully you're a hand loader, and you would have to spend some time trying to track down stuff that's going to work well for this. But of course, because this is a dated gun, and I'm not saying that in a negative way, I'm just saying this is a gun that was designed and built in a very specific time for a very specific purpose, you're going to have to track down those loading components that are really going to work well in this gun. Now, I can also see, if you really like to geek out on cartridges and ballistics, that if you're a reloader, you could really tweak this and have one fantastic and accurate firearm, but you're going to have to spend a lot of time and collect a lot of data to figure out what is the perfect cartridge and the perfect loading for this particular pistol. So it could be a love-hate thing. I would not recommend this gun for someone that's just a casual shooter, unless you're a collector and have access to very specific types of 45. I would not shoot modern loadings through this thing if you're a collector. But if you're a hand loader, it might be a fantastic gun for you if you like this type of competition shooting. But unfortunately, bullseye competition shooting is not as popular as it was way back when. Today we do more of the run and gun style, the IDPA stuff, but this is an icon of the time. It's obviously well built, extremely accurate, and designed for a very specific type of ammunition. And if you can load that ammunition, this thing shoots like a dream. So, all the criticisms I had when it came to the ammunition that I used in my original range report obviously are very valid. This thing does shoot like a dream, and unfortunately, I don't have much more of this ammo. I did save a little bit in each box, so when I do return it, the owner of this pistol, Chandler, who did lend it to the channel, can have a chance to shoot it and experience it for himself. So, if you're a collector of the Clark long slides, I hope that you're a reloader. This has been a very enlightening experience, and I hope this fixes some of the issues some people had with my initial range report. I like to revisit these things when I discover something new. So, I hope this helps you. I hope that maybe this changed some of your opinions of my original range report, and it also gives you more information, especially if you're a geek like me and love the history of these pistols. So let me know what you think in the comments section below. Have any of you guys ever shot bullseye? Do you own any of these long slide 1911s? And do you guys hand load ammo like this? I'd love to know. So, as always, thanks for watching.